Political Systems in an Age of Complexity is our research paper on the evolution of political organization in an age of globalization and information technology. In the paper, we trace the past, present, and emerging future to systems of governance, looking at the changing socio-political context as we move into a network society and the institutional reconfigurations required for political organizations to survive and thrive within such a context. The current context of political organization is one of profound disruption and transformation, where our existing industrial age paradigm to governance is being redefined. Understanding such a transformation requires both a deep understanding of the nature of political systems in the abstract and a specific understanding of how our current solutions have evolved over the course of millennia. Governance is the process of making and implementing decisions within a group of people. All political systems are based upon and form out of some underlying social system, for which they serve the function of coordination and collective decision-making. Politics emerges in an organic fashion out of the very defining characteristic of social groups, that is to say, their interdependence. In order to make decisions, act as a whole organization, and achieve optimal outcomes, it is required that members coordinate their activities in some way. This coordination, in turn, requires that the members enter into some form of binding agreement as to how they will act. As such, political systems can be understood as a set of agreements or contracts through which members give over their individual agency to form some combined organization, and thus achieve things that they could not achieve in isolation. Social governance is the management of this political organization, the making and implementing of decisions on its behalf. On a theoretical level, modern political organization is characterized by theories of the social contract. The political organization of the sovereign nation-state as a contract between members that is encoded in a constitution and set of laws, with power then being invested in some centralized government that is authorized with enforcing that contract and making decisions on behalf of the people. The story of the development of political organization in the modern era is largely a story of the rise of social contract theory and liberal republicanism, with power exercised through the sovereign nation-state via a centralized and rationalized bureaucratic system of management. An overarching philosophy was that of utilitarianism, that governments derive their legitimacy from their utility to the people. At the beginning of the industrial age, societies were becoming mass societies and most people had a very low level of material existence. The primary challenge facing an industrial society and economy is to improve the standard of material living for the mass of people. The dream of the modern era was one of a relatively high level of material standard of living for the mass of people, of political representation for all, of education and healthcare, and the formation of a relatively affluent middle class. We achieved this through a particular form of socioeconomic organization that is characteristic of an industrial society. It was achieved through centralization and standardization in order to enable batch processing and reduce the cost per unit of providing services and thus be able to provide for a mass society. During the industrial age, large mass societies formed with common markets, regulatory policy, culture, and political unity formed around the nation-state. Nation building became intertwined with the development of an industrial technology infrastructure and a market economy. The two went hand in hand as the physical technologies of the industrial age enabled people to experience the broad geographical area of the nation-state, and mass media fostered a shared national culture. However, this project of the industrial economy and political system of the nation-state largely came to a completion within developed nations sometime during the latter half of the 20th century. At that time, developments in technology enabled increased global interconnectivity as a new level of socioeconomic organization started to form on the global level. In the face of this more complex environment, the monolithic bureaucratic national system was rendered limited in capacities and a new organizational paradigm came to rise, that of the market system. The initial liberalization of economic and financial markets from the state during the 80s marked the beginning of a major process of transformation in socioeconomic organization as we began in earnest to move into the network economy and society. Since that time, we have witnessed a massive and ongoing transfer of resources and power out of the industrial age state apparatus and economy and into global networks. Through financialization, resources have come to increasingly move out of the industrial age corporation and state and flow in new directions, most notably into the development of the global financial system and new technology companies. A central aspect of this ongoing transformation has been financialization. Financialization, coupled with privatization, have transferred capital and ownership out of the nation-state system. Coupled with the advances of environmental degradation, land grabs, the rise of global cities and migration, the traditional conception of territory and national claims to ownership that support sovereignty are today changing in significant ways. The initial stage in this process was marked by what is often called hyperglobalization, starting in the 1990s, at which time we saw a huge rise of global production and logistics networks, the global derivatives market, and the formation of an identifiable global cities network. This period of huge growth in global networks of capital, physical goods, and market structures came to a close sometime after the financial crisis. Since that time, this process has continued, but in a different form, as flows of trade and people have stabilized, while global networks of information and data have soared, marking a new period that some call digital globalization. This current period may also be called the platform economy, as it is characterized by the rise of online platforms orchestrating ever more physical assets within transport systems, accommodation, commerce, etc. The platform economy upends our previous conception of globalization as it connects more people directly into the global economy. Whereas the previous form of hyperglobalization was based around the iconic global cities, outsourcing, trade-free zones, and multinational corporations. The global platform economy is a much more complex, subtle, and deeper form of globalization as these global networks now reach deeper, more directly into the territory of the state moving physical assets, capital, and people around through international flows of information, controlled by private organizations and coordinated by ever more sophisticated algorithms running on platforms in the cloud. From this vantage point, we can already see what the next stage in this very rapid evolution in socioeconomic organization will look like as the Web 2.0 technologies that created these platforms gives way to the next generation of Web 3.0 technologies. Platforms will go on to be the backbone of the networked economy and society as we go through this process of transferring social and economic organization to the internet. To date, only about 20% of global economic activity is mediated through the internet, and still, only a relatively small amount of the global financial system's resources are channeled and mediated through platforms. This has meant that the internet has remained relatively limited in its physical capacities and political significance. However, with the next generation of internet technologies, this will change. With the rise of the blockchain and the Internet of Things, combined with the current move of corporations to a services platform model, this will enable a massive convergence of the primary organizational networks of the global economy. Through blockchain, there will be a convergence of financial networks in the internet, with corporate structures of governance, in turn, merging with global supply chains and the urban networks that support them. The result of this will be the emergence of a truly networked society and economy that will provide the primary context within which organizations operate. The transition to a networked society will clearly not be a smooth one, with the hallmarks being political paralysis and disruption. In such a period of rapid deep transformation, old political categories will be rendered largely irrelevant. Traditional industrial age political dynamics surrounding state and market, left and right wing, socialism and capitalism cease to have meaning as the context that created them ceases to exist. Such traditional categorizations will be replaced by new parameters, most notably that of open or closed. Those social systems that are open to and are able to deal with such a fast-paced major transformation, and those that are not. The question then is, what will this mean for political organizations? All organizations operate within an environment, and to survive and develop, they have to be structured so as to be able to access and process the given resources within that environment. When the context changes, organizations either adapt or are, over time, rendered less relevant as they are not able to respond to the new challenges within the broader environment. In such evolution, old structures do not necessarily disappear. They often go on existing, but they become displaced from center stage by new structures that are better aligned to harness the required resources in responding effectively to the new challenges. As a new level of socioeconomic organization has emerged at a new level of complexity over the past decades, so too has emerged a new set of challenges that go beyond the capabilities of the industrial systems of political organization. And whatever form of organization that is aligned with the new context and thus able to harness sufficient resources to tackle such challenges will become the new legitimate sources for organizing society and economy. In our paper, we look at the primary dimensions of this emerging form of networked political organization that is normalized for this more complex reality. The primary transformation to all systems of organization, socio-political, economic, and even technological, as they go from the industrial model to the network model, is the transformation from the monolithic closed hierarchical structure to the open platform model. This transformation will be the same for systems of governance. The next generation of governance structures won't be centralized closed organizations. They will be platforms. The organizational paradigm of the industrial age was centralization and batch processing in order to reduce the unit cost of service provision and thus provide for a mass society. This applied to all areas from education to production lines to motorways to supermarkets to mass media and public services. These systems required a large investment in centralized infrastructure, which favored large, monolithic, closed organizations working to concentrate and control resources in the center where they could be mass-produced and then pushed out to the end user on the edges. This was the organizational engine of the industrial age. The same pattern gave us electrical power systems, transport, commerce, and, of course, governments. The organizational engine of the information age, though, is different. The power of the information age is in the analytical computational capabilities of the microprocessor and in the connectivity of global telecommunications networks. The value is not in mass-producing goods and services, it is in organizing through connecting, and that is what platforms do. They connect. They connect people so that they can organize and exchange and thus create value. Platforms are open networks, and thus not defined by a boundary condition. This enables them to harness the resources of the many instead of the few. This is a whole new source of capability and resources that the closed organization was not able to access. The platform model divides organizations into two levels. The infrastructure level is the platform. The application level is where others create solutions, the applications. The aim of the platform is to create a set of reusable and modular capacities or building blocks that can then be offered for the developers on the application level to bundle into their own solutions or create solutions for others. This is a shift from vertically closed structures pushing out solutions to end users to supporting others to create their own solutions based upon reusable and scalable building blocks that can be bundled and rebundled. In this context, governance shifts from being about control within well-defined boundaries and delivering discrete end services to becoming about the management of a functional ecosystem, the social capital in the community that enables it to coordinate and self-organize towards solving issues. The supporting context for the form of representative democracy that arose during the modern era is fast disappearing, and people's trust and participation in such closed political systems have become very low. In an age of the internet, social networks, and blockchain, political participation can be direct, and indeed, direct forms of participation, once they are possible, can be seen to be the only legitimate forms, as the representative system has been open to such manipulation. With web platforms and the blockchain, The mediated form of governance is no longer necessary as we now have the means for a more direct form of democratic system that has the potential to harness the resources of the many. In this respect, blockchain technology will play a crucial role, in that it gives the internet a layer of automated trust that was previously a major missing component. The fact that voting on the blockchain is secure and can be reduced to a time lag of 3 seconds tells us a lot about the new possibilities. IT and the blockchain will increasingly enable a much more direct, fine-grained collective decision-making process, with liquid democracy being one such example. Governments around the world, from Singapore to Dubai to Estonia, are already exploring the possibilities of the blockchain to improve service provision. But the possibilities that it enables go far beyond what they are currently considering. Blockchain technology is the key enabling technology that allows us to remove the centralized component and create direct, user-generated systems that are based on market mechanisms, tokens, reputation, and feedback dynamics. Indeed, we largely already have such systems in the form of social networks, where most people spend a lot of time creating ideas, collaborating, and voting things up and down in real time. At the same time, these massive social networks have come to surround a tiny minority of formal politicians who make rules disconnected from such networks. The blockchain lets us bridge this divide, allowing us to directly connect up social networks with formal political processes and thus re-engage the mass of people and their resources. The platform model to governance is designed to enable the emergence of order through the self-organization of members via peer-to-peer interaction. In complex and dynamically interconnected environments, the capacity to define borders and exercise top-down control is greatly reduced. The emphasis shifts to harnessing interdependencies towards enabling self-organization. The shift that comes about in a network society from independence to interdependence, in turn, creates major new opportunities for the development of political organizations going forward. With low connectivity and independent members, it is typically required to create hierarchical centralized structures for coordination, to reduce negative externalities and promote overall coordination. However, with increased interconnectivity comes interdependencies, and through the intelligent design of feedback loops, the interdependence can be used as a peer-to-peer mechanism for enabling coordination. Reputation systems are the classical example of this. Whereas previously we depended upon centralized organizations, such as governments, to vouch for our identity and trustworthiness, with peer interaction, we can use feedback to create reputation systems out of local interactions only. Such feedback systems enabled by information exchange were limited in their capacities previously. But now, with blockchain as a secure, distributed record of identity, interactions, and reputation, this becomes greatly more viable at a large scale and can be used as a governance mechanism in virtually all areas to enable alignment between the individual's actions and those of the group, limiting the dependency of top-down regulatory. However, such systems require a significant amount of intelligent design. The traditional mechanisms of the nation-state are not complex. It simply uses force and top-down structures to regulate individual behavior. The use of distributed feedback loops does not use force. It uses information coupled with economic and social capital as measured by tokens. However, it is inherently complex and is thus a challenge to societies both on a technical level of design but also a cultural level of learning to live without the comforts of centralized authority. One of the great advantages of the platform model over the traditional model is that it can harness the capacities of information technology for the rapid and low-cost duplication of solutions and avoid the proliferation of redundant solutions recreated for each different organization. Currently, we have a world of many different closed organizations, essentially all recreating the same set of services inside their specific organization. Whether in the private or public sector, a lot of resources are going into recreating the wheel for each organization. And whereas this may have made sense in a world of limited connectivity, it stops making sense and starts to simply create a massive amount of redundancy in a world where organizations can easily plug into solutions outside of their boundaries. As networks become larger and larger, this enables us to produce solutions once, rapidly duplicate and exchange them, and then implement and adapt them locally many times. The larger the networks, the more we can invest in the initial production, and the larger the gains from duplication will be. The platform as a service model enables us to invest significant amounts of resources through sustained collaboration into generic solutions that can then be easily duplicated and customized for the local context, instead of building it from the ground up for each instance. Open source software, like Apache, is created once through global collaboration on the internet and then downloaded and used in servers around the planet. This model is emerging in all areas, from building homes to the making of farm machinery, and will be the same for legal systems and the provision of public services as new systems of blockchain governance develop in the coming years. This will be a key aspect to the merging of globalization and digital platforms. Already, we see a model where solutions that involve large collaborative initiatives are created on the internet, with local organizations then connecting into these solutions to be able to deliver world-class outcomes customized to a local context. This architecture allows organizations to potentially realize a massive increase in speed, agility, cost, and quality of service. The capacity for both fast-paced short-term adaptation and long-term evolution is a key capability that will be required of next-generation political systems. Of course, we already have a system for performing the process of adaptation and evolution within democratic political systems. Democracies are designed to do this by having representatives of different ideas and opinions about how the organization should be run, and then having people vote on those to select the most appropriate given the context. However, the existing representative systems through which this is implemented is far from appropriate given the context. Placing formal closed institutions based around specific members at the heart of the organization means placing vested interests at the center, which results in inertia, resistance to change. Adaptive capacity, both short-term and long-term, can only be effectively achieved by putting an impersonal system that enables selection and evolution at the heart of the political organization and enables the individual's input to the system via direct, real-time interaction. Once a political system has shifted to a platform model based on the blockchain with a token market system, the political decision-making process can then be implemented directly through the use of tokens. In a well-designed system, the price mechanism as defined by tokens and the market are learning devices that guide individuals to discover mutual gains and use scarce resources efficiently. By connecting social media with the political process and a token system, a stock of new ideas can be continuously produced from the crowd, with the investment of tokens working to filter out the massive input, leaving only those that people are really prepared to invest their tokens in. If the idea turns into a successful project, this creates greater reputation for those who invested in it. And thus, those who are successful at curating and choosing which ideas and actions are best come to rise in a meritocratic fashion. Such token market mechanisms can be used in the full process, both for trying to predict or identify what might happen in the future through prediction markets, but also what available solutions might be the best response to that context, a form of token investment market. The network society will rewrite the rules of political engagement. In a relatively short period of time, the internet is going to stop being a decoration on existing social organization, as the global economy and global internet become one. With the blockchain and social networks, politics, economics, and finance will converge. The same tokens that you like a comment on a social network with will be the same thing you vote with, and you will also be able to convert that into financial and economic tokens. The same market mechanisms that govern financial markets and the workings of corporate strategy will be the same as the ones through which groups make decisions. Political organizations, legal systems, and public services will likely shift from a one-size-fits-all, adversarial, and compulsory model of the industrial age to a pluralistic, optional, and a peer-to-peer consensus model based around complex networks of dynamically changing smart contracts. To find out more about this changing context in the evolution of political organizations in the network society, see the full paper by clicking the link below.